You were not even trying to become an NEMT broker. You just kind of
No,
fell backwards into it.
I just did the bungee jump, like,
Welcome back to NEMT Expert Talks. I have an NEMT superstar with me today,
woo.
Stephanie Harmon, also known as the NEMT Guru. Stephanie, how you doing?
Hey, I like that intro, man. You made me feel. Listen, I feel like I need to do the waves. Yeah. Hey. I'm just playing. Oh goodness, I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me today.
Thank you for being with me. So Stephanie, you have a very interesting trajectory in the NEMT space. Like a lot
Yeah.
of people, you ran your own NEMT business for a while, but then you got these VA contracts and you started giving out ride requests to other NEMT companies. And then now, I mean, basically you've become an NEMT broker, um, which is something not a lot of people have done. Um, it's a really interesting story. I mean, you and I were talking through it the other week,
Right.
and I'd love for you to share that story with our audience today. But before we dive into it, you know
Yeah.
what? Would you like to just give a quick background about yourself?
Sure. So, you already said my name, so I'm not gonna need to repeat that. But so I was a police officer in my previous life. I was a police officer for about 15 years in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. But as you kind of think, as I went through my career as an officer and kind of moved up, I was like, well, I have three kids. They're adults. My youngest is 27, 26, 27. That's bad when you can't keep up with the age. But I was like, man, once I'm gone, like I can't pass my job as a police officer on to my kids. And so I wanted to be able to leave some type of legacy, and so I started a side hustle with like making t-shirts and custom doormats and, just being real crafty. And at the time I had a mentor and like a group of business sisters and, we would meet, hold each other accountable, but I learned the business side of it. And so when I decided to add transportation, I was talking to her one day and it was like a group mentoring, it was a group mentoring type of session. And she mentioned transportation, like non-emergency medical transportation. I was like, what is that? Like transportation? Like what is it? So did some research. Fast forward, I added or I started the transportation business, and I tell people like, man, I did some research. Like, I felt like I did research, but I clearly didn't do enough because when I first started, I worked with brokers. I did not calculate my rates. I didn't understand who my target customers were. I just thought, it's transportation. Everybody need it until I had to learn from my mentor, like, well, if you don't know who your customer is, then nobody's your customer. And so fast forward a little bit, me and my son started the transportation business together. And it just really grew, but it didn't grow until I got a complete understanding of what I did. And so even before when you look at some of my previous videos, I'm like, oh, I started if you want to know how to start your NEMT business. And so I had to change my mindset as an entrepreneur and business owner and understand like I don't own an NEMT business. I own a passenger transportation business and we offer NEMT services because there's so much that you can do in transportation. It's really just a matter of figuring out where the need is at in the area that you're going to service. So if you're thinking, okay, well I want to do dialysis and all that, but then you like, oh man, it's a lot of methadone clinics near me. Well, then that's where that's where you find out where your need is at. And so it kind of transitioned to, you know, learning and continuously being a student in it and continuing to learn. And I was like, well, once I could learn it, the other need was people are struggling to start. And so, then I had people like, man, you like a guru. And I was like, that's where Stephanie NEMT Guru came from. And I developed the course. And so, like in my previous job as a police officer, I did training. And so it came second nature to train and come up with curriculums. And so then, listen, I was like, well, how do I get stuff and bring other people on? Like, how can we all win? Like, how can other people that are struggling with trips, what do I need to do? And so I started getting private pay clients, and then I started working with vets, and they would reach out and they was like, "Oh, we got a vet that needs transportation in Arkansas. Do you know a provide? Do you have a provider there, or do you have a driver there?" And I was like, "Man, this might be something that I could really add to my services." And so as I started coming to working with either the vets or other assisted living nursing homes or whatever, I was like, well, I don't need that means I don't really need to drive. Because I done been driving, and my goal was like, I ain't about to keep driving. And so then it came to what I do now, which is really, it might be like an independent broker, but it's really just out here helping everybody and get to that thing, whatever it is in their business where they're trying to grow. And there it is.
There it is. Well, thank you for that intro. We're going to dive in now. So, you started out running your own transportation business, like you mentioned. You got these VA contracts, you were doing trips. Um, then there reached a certain point where you were like, hey, like, let me start collaborating with other NEMT businesses because there's a lot of demand coming from the
Mhm.
VA for you doing all this stuff. And then you do two things. Number one, you start dropping a bunch of knowledge on, the
Mhm.
social media. If anyone in the audience, if they search NEMT Guru, you're going to find a lot of videos from Stephanie dropping knowledge bombs about NEMT everywhere. And then you start giving ride requests out to other NEMT companies. How did you start building those relationships with other NEMT companies and passing along trips that you were getting from the VA?
So it started with my course. So what I did was I um I developed a course, so a 6 week online course. And I was like, okay, I came up with a curriculum. And it's like anything else, when you start it, you're gonna tweak it. Like it's gonna get tweaked. You're gonna add stuff, take away or whatever. And so one of the common denominators was people thought that, okay, I need to work with a broker in order to get started. You know what I mean? Like I have to work with this broker because the mindset or what's been put out is saying, okay, well, the only way that you could really be successful and when you're starting is to work with brokers. And so I did this video on TikTok, like I never forget it. I did a video and I was frustrated with the concept of brokers and saying, okay, I did this trip. I went to pick this person up and they wasn't coming outside. I blow my horn, ring the doorbell, call the broker, and they're like, "Oh, you need to wait for 15 minutes." And I'm like, "What? I gotta wait for 15 minutes? What do you mean? They're not coming to the door." And so then I was like, "I'm not getting paid." So I wasted time to get to the person sitting there waiting, and I wasn't getting paid. So I did a video, and I was like, "Brokers will make you broke." And the people came for me, okay? They came for me, and they was like, well, you need to negotiate. It's like, no, brokers will make you broke, and not necessarily in a monetary. I wasn't necessarily speaking from a monetary place. I was speaking from as an entrepreneur, your mindset when you're in this space of being an NEMT provider. What tends to happen is the it's being pushed that okay, just start and then work with brokers, and even though they're gonna take 30% of your profit, just work with them, like just get started. And I'm like, well, you remember back in the day, you would find a good job, as they say, and it'd be at the post office or UPS or something, and they like, well, you just start, and you might start at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to your schedule, but you can work your way up. And I'm telling people like that's not this. Like I can't work my way up to, they saying they're gonna pay me $15 each way, but when I've done my expenses, it comes to I need to charge $25. So I'm coming up with a loss. And so I was like, how can I help other business owners and entrepreneurs kind of adjust that and change their mindset? And
So
so
Stephanie, I want to jump in on this point because this is one that a lot of NEMT startup businesses, they don't know what to think about. Like there's advice out there that says, hey, just get started with a broker. And even though you're losing money on every trip, it's fine because it just helps you start doing trips and getting going. And a lot of
right.
people think that's okay. You're on the other side of that fence. Give me your thoughts on this.
So I'm and guess what? I'm speaking from straight experience. Like I'm very transparent in my humble beginnings. And I worked with a broker, um, and I never worked with a lot, but I worked with a few brokers, and it was just this is what we're paying. And I'm like, "Well," and then you're paying me 30 days later or 2 weeks later or whatever the is after is not what before. And I'm like, well, how do I pay my other stuff? Like, how do I pay for my insurance? How do I pay for fuel? And so I just was like, okay, there's no way that you can think as a business. I don't care, it doesn't have anything to do with taking somebody from point A to point B. As a business, if you are, if you have the mindset that working with a broker that's not going to negotiate the rate and going to pay you less than your value on what you are worth, and you in the mindset saying, well, I just need to get going, then you already in the red. Like we ain't trying to be in the red or the yellow, we trying to be in the green. And so you starting off in the red, so then how do you catch up? And that's where I was. Like I was like, okay, I'm not make this. And then if the Medicaid, billing part don't work out, then my deposit is not even what I was supposed to get. So now I'm even worse. And so I just tell people like this is not um I'm trying to keep it PG. Like this is not that this is not how you go into business. But people buy vans. I talk to people all the time as entrepreneurs. They buy a van and they say, "Well, oh, well, I saw somebody say on social media I can make 10K a month if I work with Medicaid." Oh, you probably can. Like I'm with your car, probably not. Or with one van, you're probably not gonna make 10K a month. But you have to do your research to really understand because it's different for everybody. Some people, some states, you live in, you can make a profit with working with brokers. But to answer your question directly, like when you start your business in passenger transportation, you offer NEMT services. You never go into business saying, "Oh, I want to give this company that I don't know 30, 40% of my profit. I'm just going to work and give them my money." Who goes into business thinking that? You don't. And so why do you start your business that way? That's all I ask people. Like, why do you start that way if you know that you're not being paid what you need to be paid to pay your expenses? Why do you start?
So if you are making negative money on a trip, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter, is what you're saying, that it helps you start your business, start getting things going. you just do not do a trip if you're getting paid less for that trip than it costs you to do that trip, right?
That's my opinion. Yes, I'm sticking by that thing.
All right, that's cool. That's cool.
Now I'm sure I could get some tons of arguments about that, but people think, well, if I'm not moving, then I'm not gonna make money. Well, you can not move and lose money too. You can go in the rear. Like, it just don't make, to me, it just don't make, the math ain't math, and like the math don't calculate to me right.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's keep going. So you got to the point where you were, facing this situation,
hmm
and then I'll let you continue the story.
So when I once I understood, like, but I think I also think too, like, people get into being an NEMT provider with thinking that it's not a business. You know what I'm saying? Like, I talk to people and they get into it not thinking that it's a bit like, yeah, I registered my business with the state, but it's so many people goal is just say, okay, I'm gonna work with brokers. And so I'm on the complete other end of the spectrum saying, well, how about start off thinking with the fundamentals and the foundation and saying, okay, who is my target customer? Because if you think everybody's your customer, then nobody's your customer. And so if you don't know who you're focusing on, then you don't even know how much you're going to charge them. So how are you even, like, how are you functioning as a business owner if you don't know how much you're charging for your service? You're basing your rates on what somebody else is paying you, not what you calculated based on your expenses. And so that's where the course kind of came into play, of just kind of trying to adjust and change people's mindset when it comes to the business and the fundamentals of business. And so as I started doing that, and I was like, okay, well, that's where the NEMT meetup came in, was how can I bring other providers together that's doing the same thing, network, build relationships, and it just kind of blossomed. So even now, I still attend Chamber of Commerce, has coffee with a cop. It's very important to me anyway to network. Like, networking and building relationships is how I went from owner operator and driving to coming up with a course, developing a course, to being successful in teaching other people, to saying, oh, well, how could I built relationship with facilities, so now I can share the wealth. But only way I was able to do that was to build relationships. Like, that was the only way it worked.
So if I can break it down, I mean, step one was obviously you ran your own NEMT business. Step
hmm
two was you developed this course, which then enabled you to develop relationships with other NEMT businesses in your area and in other states, and develop relationships with facilities and with the VA.
Right.
And then step three is you become the broker yourself. Can you talk about that transition from step two to step three?
So what ended up happening was, I was I was just attending. It was not planned. Like, I knew part of my 10-year plan was like, you know what, I want to be a broker. Like, I want to figure out what how I could become, and I didn't label it like independent broker. I just want to be a broker, and be able to help, not necessarily the providers that may be doing as well with private pay, but some of the business owners and providers that's not doing as well, or kind of struggling with just kind of getting going with clients, like whether it's they haven't figured out cold calling, or they haven't figured out how to sell that, be a salesman for their business. So I was getting trips requests, like, and I'm gonna be honest, like, I don't even have a wheelchair van. But I don't advertise that I don't have a wheelchair van. So when people call, and they request wheelchair services, the relationships that I built with either people that took my course or did consultations or whatever, um, I ended up reaching out like saying, hey, if I come across trips, would you be interested? Can I give you a call? And I didn't know how that would really look because when I first started doing it, I would just give people the trip. Like I wasn't taking a portion of the money or anything. And so one of the one of my friends slash she started out driving with me as an independent contractor for the school when I used to transport students. And she was like, girl, you need to stop giving away these trips. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I can't do it. So I'm just going to call you and say, hey. And so when I would speak to the client or the customer, I would just say the driver is going to give you a call. This is their name and information. I never said like, oh, it's another business. And so she was like, you calling and you giving away trips. Like, what are you doing? You need to, split it. And so I was like, I said, girl, I never thought about it. Like, I never thought about it like that again. Part of part of my plan was to say, how can I become a broker? But I'm still not like I'm in the moment, but not in the moment. Like I'm not. It's not clicking until she said that, and I was like, oh. Oh, but then I work with providers. That's how the relationships were. Like I would pass trips and they would just give me a portion of it
Yes.
without me even saying anything.
So you were not even trying to become an NEMT broker. You just kind of
No,
fell backwards into it.
I just did the bungee jump like, and it. I mean, um, but it was organically done, kind of like, but I just would say it worked out. Like it just ended up working out. And it still went back to building relationships, whether it was with the providers that I work with or the facilities, and even with transporting the vets. Like I've been trying to do that for years, and I had gotten trips like one or two, but nothing. And then they just started picking up. And then they was like, well, what other states do you have drivers in? And I was like, well, let me go in my Rolodex. Let me pull out my Palm Pilot and see. And I just connected with those providers, and I said, hey, if I send you trips to now, um, it goes pretty good. And I mean, I haven't built it nowhere near to where I want it to be. So I still do that marketing that I tell people that you have to do every day, to build that roster or build those clients to where I'm able to say, listen, I have a group of providers. You let me know what trips or how often you need trips, and then we go from there. I haven't gotten that part, concretely done, but by next year, my goal is to have it a little bit more fine tuned.
How long have you been essentially brokering NEMT trips for?
Mm, I'm gonna say 2 years. You know what? Because I I had drivers for student transportation, so it's been at least a couple years. But when it comes down to like the private pay piece, like facilities, that piece maybe a year, maybe not quite a year. I've been doing it, so that's the part. That's part of my goal for 2024 is to add more facilities or contracts to where I could be a little bit more, what I'm saying, consistent. Because it might, I'll pass along or give other providers, I won't say pass along, but give other providers trips at least 3, 4 days a week. But
And that's across the states of North Carolina, primarily, and you also are in a few other states. Which ones?
So I Georgia, South Carolina. There's not so many in South Carolina, and I have a couple of providers that I've connected with for trips in Arkansas, and I think that's about it. But
So,
mostly it's in North Carolina.
so I'm going to ask you a question that I know the answer to, but just for the sake of the audience, Stephanie, what separates you and your broker business from the other brokers that are out there?
So first, I think, in my opinion, because I've done it, so I feel like I'm on more of the side of the provider and making sure, because I'm always talking about and explaining to people, like, understand your worth. And so even for and I was just telling one of my friends, I was like, one of the providers, I sent her some information for a trip on maybe Thursday. And I was like, send me a quote, because I just started working on her. Send me a quote. And I know she's low balling herself. And so I feel like the other brokers or other companies would be like, well, that's what she sent me, so that's what I'm gonna pay her. But I know that she's just starting, and she's really just trying to understand and get the calculation of how much she should charge. So when I calculated it, I'm just gonna say numbers for example. I calculated it, and the trip was from Greensboro to Durham, which is about 60 miles, something like that, each way. And I calculated like $480 something dollars. Well, she sent me how much she would charge was like 190, and I was like, that's a huge difference. So tomorrow I'm gonna get on the wire, I'm gonna get on the horn, and I'm gonna call her, and we're gonna sit down, because I can't consciously know that she should be making more and not pay her that, because I know how that feels. And so even though I could pay her with her invoice, because that's what her invoice says, but I know that her time is way more valuable. That's, what I'm saying, that's a hour and some change drive each way. Then you have to wait. And so I'm gonna give her a call tomorrow, first thing, like, "Girl, what's happening? I got this invoice, and this thing is not. Let's talk about it." But it's coming from a good place. You know what I mean? I couldn't, and in my conscience, I couldn't do that. Like, that's not what I'm here for. And I think that's kind of what sets me apart from everybody, from other people or everybody else.
I love that, Stephanie. It's business is all about relationships.
Hmm.
And when you build the trust of the NEMT businesses that you broker out to, you're never going
Right.
to lose them. Like, you're like, hey, you're not getting paid a fair rate. I'm going to pay you more than what you're getting paid right now, even though you're not demanding it. And then, you know, you just keep building on that. You get more facilities, you get more NEMT businesses, and nobody churns away from you. Nobody leaves you because they can trust you.
Yeah,
Um,
it's all about that. It's that trust, and even when you think about it, how you saying the trust piece, like that is just organically like in me as a business owner. So even my relationships with facilities, even thinking about long term, like how can I be like the I don't want to say like the one stop shop thinking. So if you want to start your business and you need those fundamentals and starting, but what a lot of providers also need is resources. So it goes back to what we talk about is relationships, building relationships with insurance agents that can work in multiple states. So when you attend my boot camp or you know join my mentoring program, you're going to have access to those resources. So you're not going to be calling around saying, well, I need insurance for da 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 da. I'm just gonna say, okay, reach out to this person. you need a website, reach out to this person. You need policies and procedures. I'm gonna provide you with a template. And so then you're gonna want to be a part of this tribe, because I'm giving you the information that you need to be successful, not to just say, okay, well, here's a course, here's information, like go figure it out. No, because I didn't have that when I first started.
And
Right.
speaking of joining your tribe, in the description of this video, everyone, I'm putting Stephanie's contact info and website. She's always super accessible, super responsive. Reach out to her, learn from her, join her tribe. That's Stephanie Harmon, NEMT Guru. Look in the description of this video.
Yeah.
Stephanie, back to you.
We're gonna have, I think if most of us think like that, like, you understand, even when me and you had our first conversation, and I was like, man, I don't meet strangers. Like, we talking like and I just somebody in my Facebook group just said, hey, has anybody heard of Bambi software? And I was like, well, no, but let me do some research because I'm curious. I want to know, like, and so I went on your website, filled out the contact information, and you called, and here we are a week later having a conversation. But again, it's relationships. So I'm like, well, listen, I got a whole group of providers that would love to hear about your software, whether they purchase it or not. But it would make no sense to me if I had providers. I reached out to you and knew about Bambi, and I had providers that I know needed the information, and I kept it. Like, that don't make no sense. And so I'm like, man, listen, can you come on and talk to? Like, let's have a conversation in the Facebook group. And it just kind of blossomed to LinkedIn, and I think the number is consistent, is still going up. But if you don't know how to build relationships and talk to people and be open and ask for what you want, if you need help, say, Stephanie, I need help. Now, I might answer some of your questions, more than likely I will. But if you really want help, you have to be willing to invest in yourself and invest in your business. Like, there's no way that you could be an entrepreneur by yourself. There's no way that your business is going to grow without getting some help. Like, it's impossible.
Amen.
Amen and amen and amen. So here we are, like, and so I'm still a student, and I'm always trying to learn. I was just on TikTok like 3:00 and met some more, and I met some more people. Oh, sorry. And met another provider, like, in California, and guess what she does? She does interpretation. She does interpretation and for workers' comp. So when we talk about passion transportation, we could have conversations all day, because there's so many different, like, areas of passion transportation. So when people say, well, I want to get into private pay, and I just be like, well, I can't answer that in a Facebook, like, because it's not just say, oh, I want private pay, go to dialysis clinic, go to the hospital. It's bigger than that. It's way bigger than that. And so if you think about students and that need to go, special needs students that go to school, and so I just always say, NEMT is really a service, like, and brokers are just one type of customer. If you want to work with 5 brokers, that's just one piece of the pie. But if you live in an area where there's, drug alcohol treatment centers, or weight loss centers, or plastic surgeons, or if you're in Vegas and you near with a Super Bowl, why can't you reach out to hotels and say, listen, I'm offering transportation. I got 5 12-passenger vans. If any of your guests need a ride to the Super Bowl, I'm your guy. I'm your girl. You know what I mean? But passion transportation is open, and it's really just a matter of figuring out, or doing your research. I won't even say figuring out, like, finding the need. If we don't take nothing else from this, If you want to stay in business, you better find a need. You better find a need. Because if you just kind of like, oh, I'm just transporting people, but you haven't figured out like the need and how your services can come to the need and bring your services in front of those people that need it, your business won't sustain. It's all about solving problems. That's it. Solving problems. And we
Simple.
always gonna have as simple as that, but we always got transportation problems, People always need to go places.
So, Stephanie, you're building relationships with facilities across North Carolina and other states. Just curious, like, how are you doing that?
So I kind of branched out to South Carolina. I haven't really completely figured out. I mean, it might sound crazy, but my goal is to touch every state. Now it might not happen, but my goal is
You gotta think big to be big.
you scared. You can't be scared. I'm saying, I'm claiming it. Like, I want to be able to touch every state. And so I got work to do. That's all I can tell you is I got work to do. Like, I know facilities like in South Carolina, because it's just from relationships. Of course, North Carolina, but even in Georgia, Virginia, like, I'm working my way up and to the left.
Up and to the left.
Up, and then I'm gonna go to the left. 'Cause I mean, and I have conversations with providers like in Florida, and so I was like, well, I'm gonna try to do like a 1 day, like a 1 day workshop, because I do them in Georgia and North Carolina, but kind of spreading out those 1 day workshops. And in those 1 day workshops, where you're learning about becoming a provider or starting your transportation business, passenger transportation business, but that is how I'll be able to build relationships and then connect with facilities. Like, I feel like if I start with the provider and go from there, like reach the provider and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do at Bambi too. Add value to those providers, and then you can build up from there. So your broker business, S&S Courier and Transportation, is on its way to becoming a national broker.
Yeah, I'm claiming it. So what I did was, when I started transportation, it's S&S Carrying Transportation. But I've since done an umbrella and making Stephanie Harmon Professional Services and Resources. So my broker services will fall under that. And then I added my other two businesses that I already had, which is the S&S Carrier, and I still make like custom shirts for businesses, custom shirts and hats. And so I just put all of that under under my incorporated name. And so that way I ain't gotta have 3 LLCs. Like, I just need one business and everything just fall under that. And so the transportation, I haven't figured out like would I put my the broker piece or those services under Stephanie Harmon or under, I haven't figured that part out yet. Because right now it's still under S&S Carrier and Transportation, because it just seems it kind of flows better when I'm working with facilities, when I send you an invoice, or with the vets that is coming from S&S Carrier and Transportation. But
But the thing I like about you and the way you're growing your business is you're doing it organically by building relationships one after the other,
right,
rather than, going out and trying to force someone to take trips or take control of an area. Like, step by step, when you're getting to each and every one of these 50 states, it's through personal relationships we're building with transportation providers and with facilities.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah,
It's gonna be it's and the goal too is, when you think about it, is that it's no need to think that you have competition. Like, I despise, I won't say despise, but I don't like when people say, well, call your competition and see how much they charge. It's when you're thinking about your rates. And I'm like, well, it's not really competition, like, because it's enough business for everybody to be successful in whatever you consider successful. But I don't, that's why I reached out to every provider in Charlotte and invited them, sent an email, invite them to the meetups. And when we at the meetups, like, we have a good time. Like, we doing the Soul Train line. Like, we're having a good time because that's how you build the relationships. Like, okay, I'm gonna come in here and I could be myself, I can have a good time. We definitely gonna learn, and we're gonna have good food, a little bit of good food. But when I started doing the NEMT meetups, I was like, man, how could I get people to introduce their business? And you'd be amazed at how many people are nervous about their 30-second pitch or that elevator pitch just to introduce yourself. Like, and so I was like, well, how can I make it fun? And so we did like a Soul Train line, kind of like musical chairs a little bit. And so you get the providers, you play some nice little jazz groovy music. And when we stop the music, whoever's at the top, like the Soul Train line, you have to introduce yourself. And we just keep going. But if we keep doing it, then when it's time to talk to providers, when it's time to talk to facilities, you're feeling way more comfortable about talking about your business. And that's what you have to get past, being able to say, my name is Stephanie. I own this business. I service these type of customers in this area. How can we partner? And people, they don't think about that. And that's why I said I really focus on the business piece of it, because it don't take a genius to transport people. Like, it don't. You can hire somebody and train them. You know what I mean? You can hire people and train them to drive people, but what kind of culture does your business have? Like, are you making sure that you're being on time, that you're being courteous? You know what I mean? Like, are you incorporating these things in your protocols? And so that's why I think it's important, that we build a relationship, because everybody don't know, you know what I mean? And it's okay. But you gotta want to know it. You gotta want to do better if you're not doing better.
I think the main thing about you, Stephanie, and everything that you do, your brokering business, your online courses, your in-person courses, is, there's a lot of info, especially nowadays, about NEMT all over the internet. People
Right.
have a hard time figuring out, do I trust this source or that source?
Right.
It's really easy to know that you can trust Stephanie. And I can just put it in like one, simple sentence. NEMT company comes to you and says, hey, Stephanie, here's our rates that we're gonna, as a company. And you as a broker say, no, I'm gonna pay you more money because that's what you're worth. That alone just demonstrates an NEMT company can trust you with whatever it is. Like, you're paying them more than they're asking for. Like, that's it.
I was kind of blown away. And I'm not gonna lie, I was like, now, do I pay her like what she invoiced me? But I wouldn't. I think I feel like that's where leadership comes into play, and saying like, okay, I'm gonna make this a moment where I want you to see that I could have paid you because you sent me, and I asked you for an invoice and you just sent me an email that said, oh, I'm gonna charge $195, and I'm like, no, I need I need an invoice. But I think it's a teachable moment, because again, nobody pulled me to the side when I first started and said like, no, this is not how you do it. I had to learn, but if you, again, it go back to, if you understand foundation of business, like business, not NEMT, not taking people to the doctor. If you understand business, you understand marketing, you understand customer service, you understand relationships. And so you can go anywhere. I was telling them at the meetup Saturday, I was like, if you understand business and how to start, grow, or bottom line, people say you know how to make money, then you can run a business in any state. You can start. I can be here in Philadelphia and say, oh, okay, because I know the fundamentals of business and what it would take. And so I know, okay, if I want to do this, I got to do this, this, this. It's to me, it's the same thing. So when I talk to her tomorrow, I'm gonna say, now listen, when we get off this phone, you're gonna send me you're gonna send me an invoice with the right amount. But I wouldn't dare like, and I was having a conversation myself, like, good God, like if I paid her, like I feel like that would block my blessings. Like God would be like, Stephanie, now you know better.
Bless your heart. Stephanie, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story and what you do. Any last thoughts you want to leave the audience with?
I would definitely say these two words that are like on my goal list for the year 2024 is being consistent and being persistent. And so consistency means I'm gonna keep doing it. Like I'm gonna keep doing the same thing, whether it's you need marketing, whatever it is to grow your business, you're gonna be consistent. Do you need to be on social media? Whatever that thing is, you're gonna be consistent. But sometimes as entrepreneurs, being persistent, we struggle with, because you have to do these things in your business regardless of what's happening in your real life, because life be life in some time. And so you may be struggling financially in your business, you may have family issues, death in the family, vehicles, all these different things, but at the end of the day you have to be persistent. And so those are two things I would tell people, like, and start. It's not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect, but you have to start. And go on and reach out to Stephanie. Reach out to me if you need some help. My next boot camp starts February 20th, and so that's right around the corner.
And like I mentioned before, Stephanie Harmon, NEMT Guru, her contact info and website are in the description of this video.
Run, Bambi, run. Run, Bambi, run.